Okay, from our studios this week in Los Angeles and Tampa, this is Green Tag, Theme Park in 30. I'm Philip from Gantom Lighting and Controls. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Scott Swenson of Scott Swenson Creative Development. On Green Tag, we look at the week's top news, and we try and explain why it matters to industry professionals, ask some questions. We don't really have the answers, but we try to open a dialogue. And that's going to be what we're doing this week in particular, because we're going to be talking about the Six Flags refinancing of their debt. And we are not financial experts, but we're going to try and puzzle through it with all of you.
Yeah, I got into the performing arts because I was told there wouldn't be any math. So, I I was totally wrong. But yeah, so no, math is not my friend. However, financial theory, I do understand pretty well. It's just the actual computation, and then all of a sudden, here's the thing about finance, as far as I'm concerned. The rules of finance change so very often that the easiest way to keep track of anything is to keep it in the simplest possible terms, and then rely on experts who study the minutia to actually execute those simple plans. But this show also marks a very important moment. We're going back to talking about Six Flags.
Yes, I know that you're all happy about that.
Everybody loves our shows when we talk about Six Flags. So we're going to talk about Six Flags yet again.
Here we go.
Okay.
So the easiest way to explain this, actually, I think came from Robert at Theme Park Insider, who is a great journalist. And he basically was like, Six Flags is that friend who has a credit card, and they tell you they're going to get a new credit card to put the debt from the old credit card onto the new credit card. And I think that's a great way of explaining this, except you have to expand this to being the largest theme park chain in North America. So I did a lot of digging to try and explain, make sure we don't get it that much wrong. I'm sure we're still going to get stuff wrong, but I tried to do as much as I could here. Essentially, they're planning to borrow $1 billion in new long-term debt and use that money to pay off debt that comes sooner. So they had debt that was going to be due in 2027, but they're issuing $1 billion of new senior notes that'll be paid off in 2032. It's a private debt sale, so it's going to be sold to large institutional investors. It's not going to be open to the public. We're not even going to really know who bought the debt until maybe much later after it starts showing up on sheets. So the key here for me, like I was thinking about, like, what is the thing here? To me, it all boils down to opportunity cost, because what this means in layman terms is, yes, they are issuing new debt, they are treating it out, but the thing is the difference in the interest rate and why that matters. So basically, the new notes, and this was just announced a few days ago after the initial announcement, they announced that the new notes are going to be at an interest rate of 8.65%. That matters because the ones that we're doing in 2027 were only 5.5. Okay, so 5.5 to 8 point, I mean, that's over 3% on $1 billion. So I put the math in here for Scott, but basically what that boils down to.
Thank you, Philip. I appreciate that.
So what all this boils down to is that Six Flags is going to be spending about $30 million more on just interest every year. So $30 million a year on interest, because they have to refinance their debt to a later time period. That's what's going on. That's it. That's the whole nutshell.
So what I'm hearing then is it's kind of like they're treading water in a pool, and yes, in order to keep paddling, they have to add a 40-pound weight to their waist. So in other words, it's more difficult, more financially difficult. They have to spend more. They have to work harder.
Yep.
They now have to make their income.
They have less breathing room, greater, so to say.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like they have a little bit less room for experimentation. Like operations have to get more efficient, all this, because you're going to spend more money servicing your debt, and as opposed to doing stuff like taking risks on new shows or doing more entertainment experiences or whatever. Now, this wasn't their only option. I think this is what Scott and I were trying to figure out. It's like,
what else could they have done?
What else could they have done, right? And again, not financial experts here, but I think I tried to do as much research I could on this to understand it. And I feel like the only other option it seems like they had to me was really just they could have used more of their operational revenue to pay off the debt that was coming due immediately. But that, and again, the treading water thing, that would have reduce their ability to do some of the stuff they've been talking about, like upgrade the food and do new Halloween experiences and all this stuff. If they're putting their operational money towards this debt, they lose that. So basically, this is like, if we had more of the money now to build better infrastructure, could that infrastructure make ultimately more money so that we could not only pay off the additional 3%, the 30 million per year, but even go beyond that? So it's more like a much more longer term bet. It's like, if we had the money now to redo these restaurants and the restaurants made more money over between now and 2032, is that money going to be more than the additional debt that we're financing?
Right, but it allows them to go to 2032 instead of 2027.
That's right. That's right. And I mean, there's other things they could have done. Like they could have sold more assets, right? They already talked about that.
Well,
They did.
I'm not sure they're not going to. I'm still not sure they're not going to. I think that basically this kind of keeps them afloat, status quo, for 5 more years. Putting it in the simplest possible terms. So if they want to start showing profitability or paying off these debts sooner, which of course all of the stockholders are going to want, then they're going to have to be lean and mean for a while, and that may mean selling off more assets. I don't know.
We're just talking broad strokes, right?
Of course.
It's like you're right about the timeline. 2027 is not that. The question would have been, is there an asset like another park they could have sold off fast enough, right, before that ceiling came? They also could have.
And the finances would have come in for that sale, because these park sales,
right.
The finances are usually drug out over 10 to 15 years. So
it takes a while. They also could have raised equity, right? But that would have diluted the stock, and shareholders never like that when you're diluting stock, the stock price pressure, all that stuff. So they could have done that. They also could have just done nothing, right? They could have also waited and been like, hey, what if we get in enough revenue, from whatever expansions we're doing, that it might possibly get there. But I don't think that would have been likely. Clearly, I think if that were going to happen, it would have happened at Q4, which is when the Halloween and Christmas and all that stuff hit. They would have, that would have been the revenue spike, right? So,
in essence, they're basically paying $30 million more per year to get an extra 5 years.
That's right. Yeah, and there is some minutia in here too. Like the debt was issued as unsecured, which does mean that that way it doesn't tie up as many of the assets or whatnot, having to be in secured debt or whatever. So, but that's also why they're paying a higher interest rate. So they are trying to basically make themselves as liquid as possible. But
it sounds to me, and again, as Philip said earlier, we are not financial experts, and I certainly am not. But to me, it sort of sounds like they're working to get things right. That things have been kind of gone. They've kind of gone awry in the past, and they're taking between now and 2032 to get things back on track. In a place by 2032, if all goes as planned, I'm guessing their hope is that they will then be in a position to accelerate and expand and become more robust, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The question is, will the guests wait until 2032 for that kind of expansion? That I don't know.
That's right.
But basically, they're doing the same thing that all Americans are doing, right? Not all, but many Americans are doing right now, and that is to get another credit card to pay off their credit card, like Philip said earlier. The debt in general in the United States is going up.
Record highs,
is going up, and so they're kind of taking the same approach that I did in the early 90s. It's like, oh, I got this credit card maxed out. I wonder if I can get a new credit card. Hey, look at that! I can get a new credit card.
Yeah.
And simply by paying the minimum amount due, I'm just basically wasting a ton of money. So, But this at least sounds like it has a plan. So,
Well, maybe. I mean, I think. Well, that's exactly it. That's all the discussion, right? I mean, it does allow them some flexibility for breathing room, but it also means that they have to be tighter about their efficiency and margins, which means a little bit like less room for error in the long term. But then, and so that would make you then basically the natural extension of all this is that it's more important now that their plan goes according to plan. They have less room for error. And so far, have we seen that? And I don't even have the answer to that. I think everyone that comments on our shows every time we talk about Six Flags, I think there's people from all over the spectrum, right? It's very park dependent, as you know, who's upgraded their food and who's upgraded this and how this is running and how that is not running and all this stuff. So I think maybe that's to be determined. But to me, that's the biggest thing, is the opportunity cost. Your opportunity cost here is that you have lost some of your wiggle room presumably because the plan did not go according to plan as fast as they had intended. Like the revenue they were supposed to get in from this past Q4 did not get quite to what they needed. And so now they're having to do debt restructuring, which reduces their future potential for experiments and for I mean, everything has to work well now. And so the question is, like, with the new CEO and the new all this stuff and everything, is everyone going to be able to follow the plan or not? And I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
yeah, again, Six Flags has, going back in history, Six Flags has done this before. They did a massive expansion. It wasn't a merger, but they did a massive expansion where they bought a ton of parks. And they expanded too quickly, and their goal was to try to unify the parks a bit, because they bought a lot of family-owned parks and they bought a lot of smaller parks. And in many cases, to kind of reinforce what Philip was saying about it goes park to park, if you visit one Six Flags park and then travel to the next state over and visit another Six Flags park, you will have a very different experience, because the parks are still very much operated independently, or appear from a guest standpoint to be operated independently. And my guess is that this extra time that they've basically bought, they've lost wiggle room, but they've bought time, is what it, kind of.
Yep, that's it.
Kind of boils down to. But in this extra time, if I were sitting in John Riley's position, which thank God I'm not, because I'm not nearly as smart as John is, but if I were sitting in his position, the first thing I would do is say, great, let's take this time to make certain that we are as efficient, not just in each park, but across the spectrum of parks, so that we can find those savings of scale, so that we can find those best practices. And people in the parks are not going to like it, because it's going to mean they're not going to be able to do things the way they've always done them. It also means that maybe, some of guests' favorite things may be value engineered away because there's only one park in the system that does it. It's sort of like trying to right size a restaurant menu. If you've got a menu item that uses something that is not an ingredient that's not used in anything else, that menu item usually gets removed when push comes to shove, when it comes to financial well-being. If they come up with a plan to improve culinary, for example, across all the parks and roll it out to all of the parks, with an efficiency that saves them money, that would be great. But they didn't have time to do that when their debts came due in 27.
Yep. So the other news this week that we got from Six Flags, there's two other news stories. Six Flags Texas, I mean, this should be an obvious one, but they determined not to exercise the call option for Six Flags Texas, to take any more of the ownership of that park. And I think we know why. I mean, there's not, they don't have the capital, basically. But who was it? The John Riley, he said this was a difficult and deliberate decision. Six Flags Over Texas is a foundational park in our system and a prized asset within our portfolio. While the contractual terms do not currently align with our capital allocation priorities, we remain deeply committed to the long-term success of the park and believe it has a bright future as part of the Six Flags portfolio. So
in other words, we would have done it if we had the money. That's
right. Yeah. So it's a non-story, but just to put it out there so everyone.
Well, but again, that's another one of those decisions that are going to have to be made. Tough decisions that are going to have to be made.
Yep.
That are just going to keep the park afloat, we all hope.
Yep. And then I think the sexiest news, which everybody else was talking about from last week, is that
Didn't they?
Six Flags.
Didn't there's a new Six Flags park somewhere, isn't there, Philip?
Yes, there is indeed. So over the holidays, because it opened on New Year's Eve, Six Flags Qiddiya City opened up, and of course, this is the home to the new biggest, fastest, whatever new crazy coaster that everybody is gaga about, which I think I would never ride because I have been in the canyon and looked at it and it looks terrifying to
I
me.
can't wait. I
Okay.
can't wait. Now the funny thing is, I've ridden Formula Rosa, which is currently or was currently the fastest, and I only rode it twice because I kind of browned out each time. But I would definitely ride Falcon's Flight. Is that right? I don't remember. Big ass coaster is what I kept calling it. But yeah, Philip and I both had a chance to do a site tour during the IAPA trade summit there, and I am still so sad that we didn't get a chance to take any photos
Yep.
because
Yes.
just to see it running now, it's like, yep, that's what
It's
I
crazy.
envisioned. That's
It's
what I
crazy.
imagined.
Yeah, having walked around that Six Flags park, it is something else, and it's just almost the ambiance of just being inside a canyon. It's like imagine they built a theme park at the bottom of the Grand Canyon, and then the roller coaster is like on the canyon wall.
Well, and it sort of has, it reminded me, and you're going to laugh, but it reminded me of what they tried to do with Cars Land to make it look like it were in a
Oh, yeah.
canyon.
Yep, that's
Only
right.
this is a real canyon.
This
You know,
is a real
this
canyon.
is a real mountain.
Yes. And the scale is just incomprehensible, really. It's just like, this is insane. But yeah, so anyway, it's a great location, it's a great park. What I thought was most interesting is during the live stream opening, that I believe it was the park president or the park manager of that park. Basically, he just said he made the distinction between this park and the American parks, basically. And I felt like this was a weird thing to say, but he said the Six Flag parks in North America, I would classify them as an amusement park. This will be the first, I think, fully integrated theme park. What we mean by that is the minute you come into the park, the music, the theming, the facades, the attractions, the employee uniform, everything will be themed and will create that more immersive environment, which you just won't find at another Six Flags park to this level. So I don't disagree with that. I just think it's interesting that they're making the distinction finally between an amusement park and a theme park in the Six Flags chain. And I don't know. I think maybe Knott's might be the closest. Knott's or Cedar, some of the ones that might be the closest to a theme park. But in terms of, he's right. In terms of thematic design and integration, all that. I mean, when Scott and I, when we were walking through the entryway, even and just the entrance and just the themed lands, the theming, the music. I mean,
The
it's
sense
like
of arrival. It's
got all the. It is a theme park. It is, and I don't know if it's the only one in their chain, like the guy is arguing. I think not. Like I said, that those two come to mind that have some great thematic elements, but maybe because this one is so cohesive, it really is all designed to make sense. You have a hub, you have an arrival experience, like everything flows together. But
well, and it's interesting because there are certain parks that are in the Six Flags chain that were theme parks and then became amusement parks. Six Flags Great America in Gurnee, Illinois, when it was opened by Marriott, was very much a theme park. Each of the different lands, I know because I'm old enough, I was there when it opened. But each of the different lands, the employees, the cast members had completely different uniforms depending on which land they were in. The food offerings were different depending on which land you were in. All of the architecture was different depending on which land you were in. And I just recently went back there last year, and it was interesting to me to see the bones of the original intent of a theme park with all of a sudden Rakshasa, a gigantic roller coaster, just sort of plopped down like it landed, like a giant alien spacecraft landed in the middle of another place. And I mean, it makes sense because they need to use the land intelligently. That park is somewhat landlocked, unless they want to start eating up their parking lot, which they probably could because I don't think they fill it much anymore. but it's it's interesting because they've taken what was intended to be a themed experience, a theme park, and have turned it into more of an amusement park. And quite honestly, I saw the same thing the last time I was in Knott's. Now I haven't been there in many years, so I don't know whether that's still the case. But there are the first sign is that you can you can walk into a shop and buy the exact same thing no matter which land you're in.
That's a
Or you
good
can get
point.
exactly the same food no matter which land you happen to be in. That's the amusement park versus the theme park. Another cue is the when they shift. I mean, when I first started working at Busch Gardens in Williamsburg, each area, each country in Williamsburg, the employees, the cast members had their own uniforms, and they were specific to that area. So if someone got pulled from Hastings to New France, they had to go up to wardrobe, change their uniform, and go back to the other. So running a theme park has some challenges operationally in order to maintain that unique theming.
Yep.
But and that's why so often they will shift from theme park to amusement park. I mean, quite honestly, the term theme park didn't exist until Disney, and Disney was the one who truly dove in, and then everybody else pretended to be a theme park, but were really just an amusement park that had areas called different things.
Yep.
So
That is really interesting, those distinctions you mentioned, because I think that's exactly what we saw, or that's what was explained to us. I mean, we
I was going to say
obviously
we
were
didn't see
there.
it in operation.
That's right. We didn't see an operation, but what was explained to us was exactly that, where they had different restaurants that were serving different cuisines that kind of fit into the different areas, and we didn't see the costumes or any of the cast elements yet. But I mean, you could see the demarcation in the environment and in the food that was going to be offered there
Mhm.
in the different areas. So it was much more theming, but
Well,
uh,
and just also in the Middle East on Yas Island, all of those are theme parks. They have different lands which have different culinary merchandise offerings, different costuming, different architecture, different styles of rides, different types of experiences in each of the different areas. That's true of SeaWorld, Warner Brothers, even Ferrari World. The realms are a little bit less easily defined, but the wonderful pasta restaurant is in the section of the park that's talking about the history of the company, which takes you back to Italy. So
mm,
Mama Rosa's, good
yeah.
stuff.
Well, so anyway, that was the big news about the opening, and now it's been in its through its first week and after the holidays. So I think more people are paying attention to it. And
Did
just to
anyone
be
else?
clear,
I'm just
mhm.
curious. I'm sorry, Philip. Go ahead.
I was going to say, just to be clear, because I think this, that when we're talking about the debt and we're all this like nonsense and everything about their expansion and all these plans, like they don't own Six Flags Qiddiya. Like Six Flags is only in a operating agreement, so they are getting paid to operate it, and they're getting paid for the name, but it wasn't financed by them, and so it's just it's kind of funny if you think about it in that way, where you're like, well, you have the Six Flags themselves saying this is their best park, but like they don't own it. They didn't pay for it. Like, and you could say almost make the counter argument of like, they probably couldn't have afforded to make this park because of the level of theming.
No, but again, that's true throughout the Middle East. You
That's
know,
true.
any of the parks that you see coming into really anywhere in the Middle East, those aren't. Sorry, the new Disney park on Yas Island, that's owned by Moral, or will be owned
That's
by
right.
Moral. SeaWorld, Warner Brothers World, Aqua Arabia, which doesn't really have any parks elsewhere, but they're notorious. They're notorious for leasing brands and taking the operating expertise or experience that these brands have. They also have name recognition, and if their goal is to try to bring people in from outside the country, they are going to be much more eager to visit the best Six Flags park in the world than to visit this brand new theme park that has a really big roller coaster in Saudi Arabia.
That's right.
So
Yeah, we are. I think I talked about that in our Green Tag newsletter a few weeks ago about the concept. that this is a little bit of a different model. I mean, on the show, we talked about the idea where this is going to be a new way of doing theme parks. But you kind of think about, you can also extend that and think, well, it's Qiddiya City is shaping up to be a similar model to Yas Island. And in both models, it's very much the Walt Disney World original concept, but on a larger scale, because you have different parks that are different licenses. Like you have a SeaWorld, you have a Warner Brothers, you have these things that are different licenses, but they are owned by the same government entity. So it creates a bubble that is almost like the house wins, but in this case, the house is like the government, and the tourism sector wins. No matter what you do in that tourism sector, they kind of win on that. And so but in a way, it creates less of that kind of like local competition, but the competition is between neighboring countries, right? So you have Qiddiya City, and Universal announced potentially going into Qiddiya City. We talked about that as well, but they announced potentially going into this region. But that would be the same type of agreement as here with Six Flags, like where it would be a license. It would not be owned by Universal. We do not know who would operate it, but it's the same concept where now you have whole governments, so it's kind of like, I think in our newsletter, I was like, imagine if like all of Orlando was kind of operated by like the US government, and then Tampa was like Canada. And so you have countries that are investing and competing. You don't have like local businesses really as much. And so is that better or worse for competition? I don't know. I don't think we will know.
Well, it's kind of comparing apples and aardvarks, though, because
that's right. That's exactly. It's a whole new system. It's a new way
system.
of
yeah.
Of
I mean,
it.
If the United States all of a sudden were to say, okay, we're interested in expanding the attractions industry, so we are going to buy and fund all of the Disney parks, all of the Six Flags parks, all of the who's another big player, all the Universal parks in the United States. We are going to own and operate all of them. In this country, people would have a coronary because, the word socialism would be thrown around, the word monopoly would be thrown around. But that is the business model in the Middle East, which, you can chastise it all you want. I know every time I talk positively about anything in the Middle East, I usually get some flack about how wrong it is and how terrible it is. And my only recommendation is go there, experience it yourself, and then tell me. But the idea here is it's a different model that has the potential of being very successful. I mean, as Philip mentioned, Walt Disney World, the whole purpose there was every dime that you spent went into Disney's pocket. That was
the house always wins.
The house always wins. And people who have taken a Mears bus from Orlando Airport to that Mears stands for mouse ears. I mean, it's owned by Disney, so that money goes into Disney's pocket. That was the business model. It's no different than Yas Island or Qiddiya City.
That's right.
The money you spend while you're there, the money that you spend on the hotel, which has a different name than the theme park that you go to, which has a different name than the golf course, which has a different name than the concert venue, which has a different name than the Formula One racetrack that's there, or will be there, all goes to the same entity. It all goes back into an entity that is representing the government.
That's right.
And by representing, I mean owned by. But
yeah.
So
yeah. And I think it's all to do with diversification as well. I mean, the whole thing, the whole reason this is happening is because they're diversifying away from oil. But that's the same reason that Universal is making all the moves they're moving. They're diversifying away from their loss of cable assets. So it's all been anyway. The only thing last year to close off, there was a comment on last week's episode about, we talked about the K-shaped economy last week, and a few folks were talking about how they see people still spending money, so they're not sure about that. And again, our disclaimer, not financial advice, et cetera. From my understanding, though, what the situation is that Americans are just taking more debt. We have record high debts in personal debt. Credit cards are shooting up. All this. It's the expansion of buy now, pay later. All these elements are making it easier for people to take personal debt and push it up. And so that's my understanding is if the person can't afford it, then they just make the decision to put, like, just like Six Flags, get another credit card, buy now, pay later, do a different agreement for a loan or something to push that money out a little bit. And that's how they're affording some people. That's how some people are affording their vacations.
Sounds like the early 1990s all over again. It's funny because, everybody thinks, oh, this is so new that there's so much people who are using debt to pay off debt. No, it's cyclical.
It's cyclical.
It is a non-sustainable system. Mm-hmm. Just by its very nature, it is an unsustainable system. So it's going to crash. It's going to come crashing down on itself, and people are going to get hurt, and there's going to be some sort of bailout, and then everybody's going to be careful for a while, and then all of a sudden, things will get tough again, and it'll start all over. So, yeah, it's nothing new.
Just like us next week.
That's right. Oh, you know why? Because we're out of time. Normally, I'm the one who keeps track of the time, and I didn't. So, thank you for that reminder, Philip. I appreciate that. Until next week, once again, everyone, please subscribe.
Yes, please subscribe to our YouTube. Oh my God.
Subscribe to our YouTube. Please. And again, this is not because Philip and I want to, become multi-billionaires and live on a private island somewhere. This is just so we can keep doing the show. We have to make certain that the finances that are needed to keep the show going are there. And by subscribing, it doesn't cost you a dime, but it does help us with monetization. So please make sure that you subscribe. If you've got multiple emails, subscribe under each one. I don't care. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. I'll cheat the system. It's okay. Oh gosh, shh, don't tell YouTube. Anyway, on behalf of Philip and myself, Scott Swenson, this is Green Tag Theme Park in 30, and we will see you again next week.